Well, folks, thanks for tuning in at the start of the week here. It's been a wild weekend, and if you tuned into the Saturday look at the week ahead, you'll see already some of the things that we were talking about are unfolding just as we predicted and ahead of what some of the mainline media are giving you. So thanks. We try and deal with the news that matters most and give you some of the insights behind the scene, as we say, in Greenland. That continues to shape up the situation here. And now we see the EU, the European Union, and that whole community of nations really taking almost more than taking sides. They're really lining up against President Trump and his ongoing statements relating to perhaps U.S. taking over Greenland. And that has really driven up concerns right across. We're going to talk about how that's affecting you on the stock markets and take a look at what that means. It's reported that President Trump got a hold of the Prime Minister of Norway, told him he was upset that he didn't get the Peace Prize. We're just trying to verify this. And that's why he's going to proceed maybe not as peacefully as he would have. And so that's creating some real issues for sure. You know, there's an interesting precedent that people continue to look back in terms of agreements that the U.S. has signed with Denmark or Norway relative to Greenland. And we talked about some of those last week. There's an agreement where back in 1916, Denmark actually sold what we now call the Virgin Islands to the United States, sold them for $25 million, which doesn't seem like a whole lot of money. If you put that in relative terms today, what would that be worth? It'd be 750 million or about $1 billion. So still not a lot of money in today's thinking, but Virgin Islands wasn't seen as that valuable an asset. But in the signing of that purchase, the U.S. signed an agreement saying that they would not object to Denmark pursuing economic and political interests vis-a-vis Greenland. So those are the type of things that are going to come up and be put as legal impediments to what President Trump wants to do. Listen, it's also affecting when you get, this is seen as quite serious now. So you've got the EU really lining up aggressively against the U.S. That makes people in the stock market nervous. So stocks have dropped over the last 2 days significantly, and that means gold has gone up. Remember, anytime there is instability, especially global instability, people will back away from certain stocks and go to what's always been trusted down through the centuries and down through time, and that is gold. So gold is on the move back up, and the stocks that mainly get affected at a time like this are luxury stocks and tech stocks. That's where you're going to see the biggest hit. I think it will be temporary, but you're going to see that kind of movement there. In Canada, we see a continued pursuit, the hot pursuit in Canada of a cozier relationship with China. That's going to affect things as far as how the U.S. sees Canada. I can tell you, as a previous Minister of Public Safety for Canada, it is somewhat disturbing and alarming knowing what the Chinese intelligence network is all about, knowing how vicious they can be. And this is going to be alarming even to our friends beyond the United States, but in what we call the Five Eyes community, Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain. This is a concern when Canada seems to be pulling so closely to China. And usually I'm pretty tough on mainstream media. I'm going to say in the Canadian mainstream media, with one of the networks known as CTV News, I'm going to give them a thumbs up because they carried a report. Vasi Kapelas is the interviewer there, and she's interviewing who we call one of the Michaels. The Michaels, for those of you outside Canada, were two individuals, both the first name Michael, obviously, who not that long ago were held in China for a long period of time in incarcerated facilities. And one of the Michaels was on and being interviewed, and he kind of underlined these concerns that said, you know, China thinks very differently about almost everything, and it's a bit of a concern to see Canada drawing closer and cozying up. We're going to see where that goes. In California, just showing how people can vote with their feet. The vote there on in the state of California relative to they're going to be really beating up on those big nasty billionaires So increased taxes coming to hit billionaires, and already there is a move of people who could possibly be hit by that, billionaires, moving to states where they're not going to get clobbered just because they're successful. And one of those states being looked at is Florida, which has a less punitive effect on people who are successful. Keep in mind, when people say, well, you're making $1 billion a year, when you're assessed at being a billionaire, that in almost all cases, that means the stock value that you hold in the company that has $1 billion status, the stocks you hold are worth $1 billion or more. It's not like you're sitting on this big pot of cash in your living room that you can just dig into anytime you want. And so if you are taking away, if a so-called billionaire is forced to sell millions and millions of dollars worth of stock to pay the tax that she is being assessed for being a billionaire, whenever a company all of a sudden sells a bunch of stock, the value of that company invariably goes down, because people start to worry, why is the big boss, why is she selling out her stock? It's stupid. It's built on socialistic envy. Billionaires provide thousands upon thousands of jobs, provide payments so that people can buy homes and themselves become upwardly mobile. So we're watching as people are moving with their feet. You cannot do this type of thing and think that it's going to make your state more prosperous. It will hurt. It will hurt California. Talk about people voting with their feet. You may have been aware, those of you who are frequent flyers in the US or in Canada, a major Canadian airline which does fly into the US, known as WestJet, had announced not that long ago that it was going ahead with plans to bring forward tighter seating plans. It can't get much tighter in some of those seats. And WestJet said, well, they want to add an extra row of seats, so we're going to make it tighter. We're going to shrink that knee and leg room to 28 inches. And you know what? Customers really, right across the line, right across the internet, were just going berserk on this. They're saying they're never going to fly with WestJet. They're showing pictures of passengers, with their knees almost cranked up to their shoulders, and just a terrible public relations disaster for WestJet. WestJet has now announced they're not going to go with the more cramped seats. So it's a bit of a sign, in a free market, let people decide, let people make the decisions, let people walk away from the vendors of whatever product or service it is if it starts to get out of line. People will force companies to make the decisions. The government officials everywhere would have loved to spend 2 or 3 years and have a commission on this and taking a look at the whole area of cramped seats and appoint commissioners and multi-million dollars and then come out with crazy regulations for airlines. Let people vote with their feet, as they're doing in California, as they're doing for WestJet. Seems like they've turned it around. Well, on the increasing tensions relative to ICE, these are the immigration officers in the U.S. who have been given the task of finding and locating the people who are in the U.S. illegally, and mainly they are going after, it's important to remember this, violent criminals, those with repeat violent crime records, sexual offenders, and they're in the country already illegally. That's who they're going after. And of course, the states, the Democrat states, love those kind of people. So it's really been unfortunate and crazy to see public officials almost encouraging people to get out and protest and jump in front of these officers, these peace officers. When you look at the crowds that are protesting too, isn't it interesting? It's almost all white liberals that are out there doing the protesting. But regardless of that, an Episcopal bishop now, Robert Hensfield, has come out with a directive to all of the bishops that he's responsible, saying, get your finances in order, get your will in order, because we're probably going to get killed as we go out on the lines and push back against these ICE officials. So here you have a church leader encouraging people to get out there, mix it up, risk all kinds of terrible circumstances, and get your will ready because, you could be a martyr and die in the cause. Interesting that the Bishop Rob Henschfield, and I just appealed to him right now, I didn't see any comment from you about the protesters smashing into a church, which was having a church service. This is in St. Paul, and frightening people, causing damage. It's unheard of in U.S. history or Canadian history. It's unheard of in the free world to allow protesters to smash into a church. Talk about not wanting to have a place of sanctuary. And even the mayor of St. Paul almost encouraged it. Didn't tell people to give their heads a shake and to stop this stupid behavior. So Rob Henschfield, Bishop, I'd like to see you have a comment or two about the protesters smashing into churches. And by the way, Bishop Rob, haven't seen you out there with your signs up in support of people in Iran who are being slaughtered by the extreme Islamist regime there. So just a word there to the Episcopal Church. For years, those of us who talk about the fact that universities have embraced cultural Marxism and have become culturally Marxist in their view, even to the point of following one of Marx's plans of attack, and that is to cancel, to get rid of people who have a different point of view. So we've been talking about that, and universities going woke, and mainstream media says, you're just pushing conspiracy stuff, and universities are beautiful places and they allow full freedom of speech and diversity, and really they don't. That's been proven. And now we have none less than Alan Garber, the president of Harvard, saying that the university has gone too far left and has been wrong to enforce it to the detriment of really free discussion and diversity of discussion. So I'm looking for all those networks who laughed at us for years, those of us who are raising the concerns about forced ideology in the universities. There's the president of Harvard kind of agreeing with us on that one. Well, if you don't want to go with what the president of Harvard is saying, Rob Schneider, those of you who are followers of Hollywood and entertainment, a very funny guy. As you know, Rob Schneider, a big hit for a number of years on SNL, on Saturday Night Live, and then some pretty wild movies he did with Adam Sandler and others. He's come out now, he's put out a bit of a list and saying, look at what happens when an entertainment company decides to go woke. They may well wind up going broke. The series has been quite popular and gotten some Golden Globe awards called Stranger Things. Their least watched episode was their 5th episode, and in that one of the main characters, a guy by the name of Will, he gathers the family together because this nasty monster that lives beneath the ground that's going to come and attack them. There's going to be a big war, the monster called Vecna. And so the family gathers thinking that Will is going to be saying, okay, here's how we're going to fight to the death, and here's how we're going to fight this monster. And no, what does Will do? He thanks the family for coming, and he uses that opportunity to come out and confess that he is gay. So nothing about being attacked and probably killed by the monsters. You know what? Hollywood needs to catch up with the time. People have gotten over gay, whether it's gay relationships, gay lifestyles, whatever, whether people agree with it or not, society has moved on. Gays are not being attacked for being gays. I just published a story last week about a man killing his gay lover with a hammer, but Hollywood keeps trying to make victims, keeps trying to correct or make victims and then promote their victimization movies. So that was the least watched episode. Another big flop in Hollywood was Black Cleopatra, again, taking history and twisting it around on its head, a money loser. You all familiar, many of you be familiar with the animated series Toy Story, which I liked watching with my kids and even like watching it as an adult. And of course, the character Lightyear. Well, he comes out with, there's some interesting, let's just say, orientation-related material there. That was the one of the lowest watched of all of those series. And there's a series called Transformer. I don't know if you've seen it. Your kids may be watching it. One of the characters is called Nightshade. And Nightshade is a robot. Nightshade even came out declaring himself to be non-binary. Wants to be called by the kids. He wants the kids to refer to him as they, them. There you go, non-binary robots. I kind of always thought robots were sort of non-binary, but this is a new dimension, I guess. What's the message there? Well, the message, according to Rob Schneider, to media companies, again, like Disney, which now it's recorded, it took $114 million hit, $114 million lost when it tried to go woke with Snow White series. And so the message from Rob Schneider is, you want to go woke? You're probably going to go broke. Folks, thanks for tuning in today, and talk to you tomorrow.